Hi there, this is Kay from essentialkorean.com. 안녕하세요, Essential Korean K쌤입니다. In this episode, we will learn another particle, the 을를 particle set, often referred to as the object particle, and be comparing it to the other particles we've learned so far, namely 은는, 도, and 이가. You will hear and practice many sentences using those particles with situational examples. I also have a song for us to listen to titled 잊을게, I'll Forget You, by the famous rock singer Hyun and his band YB. Let's get started. The 을를 particle is known mostly simply as the object particle and is a paired set like 은는 and 이가. 을 follows a word ending with a consonant, while 를 follows a word ending with a vowel. A quick example would be having 을 with 감, persimmons, to say 감을, and 를 with 사과, apple, to say 사과를. For its function, the particle 을를 is attached to a noun to mark the noun it follows as the object of a sentence. For example, if we wanted to say Brian likes apples and mark apples as the object, how would we use the 을을? You are correct if you said Brian이 사과를 좋아해요. Notice how we used 이, which we learned last episode, to indicate Brian to be the subject. Please repeat after me to say Brian likes apples. 브라이언이 사과를 좋아해요. 브라이언이 사과를 좋아해요. 브라이언이 사과를 좋아해요. Let's imagine a situation where you and your colleagues are making plans for an important client, Henry, coming to Korea. While discussing dinner plans with him and deciding which restaurants to take him out to, you decide to ask one of your colleagues who knows Henry well what Henry likes. Using 을를, can you say the question to find out what Henry likes? 헨리 씨가 뭐를 좋아해요? First, please note that she after Henry is a term usually added after the name of someone with whom you do not use 반말, the casual intimate speech style, to keep social distance. Henry 씨 is followed by the subject particle 가 because Henry is the subject of the sentence. 뭐, which means what, is followed by the object particle 를. And we have the verb 좋아해요, which means like. Bringing them all together, let's say, what does Henry like in Korean? Please repeat after me. 헨리 씨가 뭐를 좋아해요? 헨리 씨가 뭐를 좋아해요? 헨리 씨가 뭐를 좋아해요? Now, in colloquial speech, in place of 뭐를, you are likely to hear a single syllable 뭘, which is the contracted form of 뭐를. The contraction happens when the object particle 를 follows a vowel-ending word, where 를 becomes the consonant 리을, which in turn is attached to the preceding syllable. Thus, 뭐를 is contracted to 뭘. Essential Korean Podcast를, in which Essential Korean Podcast is followed by the object particle 를, would be contracted to Essential Korean Podcast을. So you might hear me casually saying Essential Korean Podcast를 들어요, which means I listen to Essential Korean Podcast. Again, Essential Korean Podcast를 들어요. I listen to Essential Korean Podcast. Let's ask the question, what does Henry like? In Korean again, using the contracted phrase 뭘 as a native speaker would. Please repeat after me to say the question in which 뭐, what, followed by the object particle 를 is contracted to 뭘. 헨리 씨가 뭘 좋아해요? 헨리 씨가 뭘 좋아해요? 헨리 씨가 뭘 좋아해요? This time, you are the one who knows Henry well and you know he likes meat. If I told you that meat in Korean is 고기, how would you answer the question? 헨리 씨가 뭘 좋아해요? Using the object particle 을을. You are correct again if you said 헨리 씨가 고기를 좋아해요. Please repeat after me to say Henry likes meat. 헨리 씨가 고기를 좋아해요. 헨리 씨가 고기를 좋아해요. 헨리 씨가 고기를 좋아해요. Is anyone wondering if you could also contract the phrase 고기를? Sure you can. Can you then guess what it will be contracted to? You get a bonus point if you answered 고길 and said 헨리 씨가 고기를 좋아해요. Henry is coming to the right place because in Korea, Korean barbecue restaurants where people cook their own meat at the table are everywhere, from casual ones to fancy, expensive ones. Moving on from our 고기 adventures, you and your colleagues are going over Henry's daily schedule when he visits Korea. You want to ask whom Henry is meeting on the day of his arrival. How would you ask that using 을을? Yes, you can say 헨리 씨가 누구를 만나요? 헨리 씨 is followed by the subject particle 가. 누구, who is followed by the object particle 를, making 누구를 meaning whom, and 만나요 means meet. Let's bring these all together and repeat after me to ask whom Henry is meeting. 헨리 씨가 누구를 만나요? 헨리 씨가 누구를 만나요? 헨리 씨가 누구를 만나요? 헨리 씨가 누구를 만나요? Can anyone guess how you can sound even more casual? You can contract 누구를 to 누굴. Please repeat after me to say who is Henry meeting? 헨리 씨가 누굴 만나요? 헨리 씨가 누굴 만나요? 헨리 씨가 누굴 만나요? The subject, the object, and the verb are basic elements that make up a sentence. And naturally, it is important to learn the particles that are used with the subject and object in a sentence. One important fact to note about the particle 을을, however, is that 을을 is very often omitted in casual speech. So we can have sentences like 헨리 씨가 고기 좋아해요. Henry likes meat. And 헨리 씨가 누구 만나요? Whom is Henry meeting? Where there's no object particle after the object of the sentence, 고기 and 누구. Now you're probably wondering and asking, what is then the difference between the sentences with and without the object particle after the object of a sentence? In everyday conversation, don't worry about using the object particle too much. But in cases where you want to place emphasis on the object of the sentence, add the object particle. For example, if you are surprised to hear that Henry is meeting Susie, you can react to the information, putting emphasis on Susie by saying, 헨리 씨가 수지를 만나요? With 를 after 수지, the object of the sentence. Comparing 헨리 씨가 수지를 만나요 and 헨리 씨가 수지 만나요. The sentence with the phrase 수지를 brings out Susie more than the sentence with 수지 alone without 를. Pretend you're very surprised to hear that Henry will meet Susie because you had believed they were not on good terms. Express your surprise. Repeat after me. 헨리 씨가 수지를 만나요? 헨리 씨가 수지를 만나요? 헨리 씨가 수지를 만나요? One more example. Pretend you just learned that Susie is teaching kickboxing. You are taken aback because you never saw Susie as someone who would exercise or do any sport, let alone kickboxing. Let's react to the information, expressing your surprise. We would need the object particle after kickboxing. Please repeat after me. 수지가 킥복싱을 가르쳐요? 수지가 킥복싱을 가르쳐요? 수지가 킥복싱을 가르쳐요? One final point to remember when using 을을 is you cannot combine 을을 with the particle 은는 or 도. Let's say you want to say I eat bagels. 나 베이글 먹어요. Where there's no subject or object particle works. 나는 베이글 먹어요 works as well. 나는 베이글을 먹어요. Highlighting and bringing out bagel as the item I eat. But 나는 베이글을은 먹어요. Or 나는 베이글은을 먹어요. Does not work as you cannot combine the particles 을을 and 은는. If instead you wanted to say I eat bagels but imply there are other things I don't eat, you don't need 을을 after the object, but would use 은는 and say 나는 베이글은 먹어요. To say I eat bagels but imply there are other things I don't eat. With that line of thinking, 나는 베이글도 먹어요 is correct, while 나는 베이글은도 먹어요 or 나는 베이글도은 먹어요 is incorrect in saying I eat bagels in addition to other things. Now let's move on to today's song. As stated in the beginning, today we will be listening to 잊을게 by Hyun, who also wrote the lyrics of the song, and his band YB. Don't be misled by the uplifting melody though. This song is about bygone love, which seems to be an unintentional trend of the songs we select for teaching particles. Let's listen to the song first. Listen for any 을을 particles.
아침에 눈을 떴을 때 너를 길을 걷다 멍하니 너를 지금은 내 곁에 없는 너를 그리워하네 바보처럼 나보다 행복하기를 바래 내 생각하지 않기를 바래 더 좋은 사람 만나길 바래 다시는 내게 올 수 없게 안개처럼
The lyrics you heard manifest a few distinct characteristics of the Korean language I have discussed on our podcast. 1. The subject I, 나, is not mentioned anywhere because it's naturally assumed that the perspective is the speaker. 2. Unlike in English, the particle or the context marks the object of a sentence in Korean, not the word order. In this case, 너, you is marked to be the object of the sentence with the object particle 를. You hear the object phrase 너를 repeated in each line in the part of the song that's introduced in this episode. 3. The main verb is saved toward the end of the part you hear. So we don't learn what the verb for the object phrase 너를 is until later. We should thank the very fluid nature of the Korean word order for this, making it possible for us to anticipate how the lyrics will come together in the end. Okay, now here comes the lyric. Please try to look for the now familiar particle 을을. 아침에 눈을 떴을 때 너를. 아침에, in the morning, 눈, eyes, followed by the object particle 을, 눈을. 떴을 때, when I opened, 너, you, followed by the object particle 를, 너를. Bringing them all together, 아침에 눈을 떴을 때, in the morning when I opened my eyes, 너를, you. Next line. 길을 걷다 멍하니 너를. 길, path or road followed by the object particle 을. 길을. 걷다, walking, 멍하니, mindlessly. 너, you followed by the object particle again 를. 너를. Bringing them all together. 길을 걷다 멍하니, walking down the path, mindlessly. 너를, you. Next line. 지금은 내 곁에 없는 너를. 지금은, at least now, 내 곁에 없는, not being next to me, 너를. You followed by the object particle 를, 너를. Bringing them all together. 지금은 내 곁에 없는, not being next to me anymore, 너를, you. And next, here comes the verb paired with the object phrase 너를. 그리워하네, I miss. 바보처럼, like a fool. So, if this were a song in English, the lyrics would have been something like this. When I open my eyes in the morning, I miss you. When I walk the path mindlessly, I miss you. Like a fool, I miss you who is no longer next to me. The next part has the main verb 바래, which means hope, which you will hear at the end of each line. Whatever he hopes for is marked with the 을을 particle and appears right before the verb 바래. I'll go over it line by line, so listen for the object particle 를 before 바래. 나보다 행복하기를 바래. I hope that you are happier than I am. 내 생각하지 않기를 바래. I hope that you don't think of me. 더 좋은 사람 만나길, which is the contracted form of 만나기를 바래. I hope that you will meet someone better. 다시는 내게 올 수 없게, so that you will not come to me again. Okay, with a good understanding of the lyrics now, let's listen to the song one more time. In the first part of the song, look for the object phrase 나를 at the end of each line. In the second part of the song, look for the object phrase with 를 followed by the verb 바래 at the end of each line.
아침에 눈을 떴을 때 너를 길을 걷다 멍하니 너를 지금은 내 곁에 없는 너를 그리워하네 바보처럼 나보다 행복하기를 바래 내 생각하지 않기를 바래 더 좋은 사람 만나길 바래 다시는 내게 올 수 없게.
Doesn't this first verse make you want to continue listening? Still, for the purpose of learning how ullut is used in action, we will keep it here. It only gets better from there though, so I suggest you look up 잊을게 or I'll Forget You by YB and Yoon Hyun and listen to the entire song. Alright, thank you again for listening to another episode. If you learned something or want to show your support for our podcast, please consider leaving a rating or review for this podcast. It helps a lot with visibility and helps us reach more Korean learners. I'll connect with you next week, so be on the lookout for a new episode. Until then, keep studying hard. 고맙습니다.